The royal hall of the Valyrian spire trembled under restless whispers as the council waited for the human delegation to arrive. High above the chamber floor, Princess Alira stood behind the shimmering veil of her private balcony, watching the doors like they might burst open with monsters. Every tale she had heard of the incoming Groom had carved fear into her thoughts. Humans were said to be fierce in battle and unyielding in spirit. The stories painted them as a species that rose from storms and fire to dominate worlds far beyond their birth system. Many in the Valyrian court believed humans possessed hearts of iron and tempers of blades. Alira had never met one. Yet her marriage had been arranged as part of a treaty designed to protect her people from the spread of hostile empires. She was to be the symbolic bridge that bound the two species in unity. But all she could think of was the rumor she had heard only days before. The human Groom had defeated a war beast twice his size during an invasion on a fringe world. He had been called ruthless, fearless, unbreakable. Some even used the word cruel. Alira pressed a hand to her chest to steady her pulse. She had spent days preparing herself to face whatever horror arrived wearing human form. She imagined a towering brute with a voice that cracked stone. She pictured cold eyes and a colder soul. The Valyrians valued grace and calm, and she feared she would not know how to stand tall before someone forged in the chaos of war. The chamber doors opened. The humans entered. Alira's breath halted. They were not the beasts that stories described. They had an air of quiet discipline rather than chaos. Their strides were firm, but not overbearing. They did not look around with conquering intent. Instead, they moved with a kind of composed alertness, like guardians rather than aggressors. At their center walked the Groom. His name was Rylan. He was tall compared to the Valyrians, but not monstrous. His build was solid, a kind shaped by real work rather than vanity. His uniform carried no weapons and bore only minimal marks of rank. His dark hair was trimmed neatly, and his gaze traveled across the hall with calm awareness. Then he looked up. His eyes met Alira's. The moment froze her entire being. She expected coldness or cruelty. Instead, she found a depth she had never seen. His stare held focus, yes, but also something she could not decipher. It was not dominance. It was not hunger for power. It was not even curiosity. It was patience. It was a stare that said he was willing to stand his ground, but not for violence. For understanding. Alira's fears loosened, though she did not fully understand why. When the ceremony began, she descended from her balcony. Her gown of luminous silk trailed behind her, scattering pale light across the steps. Every eye in the chamber was fixed on her. Yet she saw only the human waiting at the center of the hall. Raylan stood respectfully as she approached. He did not reach for her. He did not move as though claiming her like a prize. He simply waited until she came to stand before him. He bowed his head slightly. "Princess Alira," he said with a steady voice that carried neither arrogance nor hesitation. "It is an honor." The rumors had failed to mention that his voice was gentle. Alira found her own voice caught behind her tongue. When she managed to speak, it came softer than intended. "Commander Rylan, I greet you in peace." His expression eased. Not with pride, but with relief. The council proceeded with the formalities. Valyrian rites involved the joining of light crystals, a symbolic merging of fates. 2 thin crystals were placed upon their palms. They were to lift them at the same moment and let their energies intertwine. The rite was simple for those untroubled, but difficult for those whose emotions were turbulent. The crystals reacted to fear or conflict. Alira's hand trembled as she raised her crystal. She feared that it would flash red, the color of dissonance. She feared everyone would see the panic that still clung to her thoughts. But then she felt a shift. Rylan had extended his free hand just slightly. Not touching, not reaching fully, but showing it was there, if she needed a point of steadiness. She inhaled. The crystals lifted Dot together. Their light blossomed into a soft white glow. The hall erupted in applause. The council members exhaled with relief. The alliance was sealed. Dot, yet Alira barely heard the cheering. She could not stop looking at Rylan, and he kept his eyes on her with that same quiet patience, offering a small nod as though to say she had done well. Later, in the private chambers assigned to diplomatic couples, Alira stood near the tall windows overlooking her city. The glow of the towers painted the room in shades of violet. Ryland remained on the opposite side of the room, respectful of her space, observing the architecture with interest rather than judgment. She broke the silence first. "I had fears about today," she admitted. "I believe the stories." Ryland looked at her calmly. "Stories have sharp edges. Humans know that well." She turned toward him. "I heard you were ruthless." His gaze did not waver. "Do you believe that now?" She considered his question. He had not once displayed aggression. He had not demanded respect. He had not acted as though she were a possession in a political game. "No," she said softly. "I do not." He nodded once. "Good, because I did not come here to frighten you." She felt a small warmth spread through her chest. He walked closer, but not too close. Enough that she could see the sincerity in his expression. "Princess," he said, "this union is not a chain. It is not a victory for either side. I intend to uphold the treaty, but also to know the person who stands beside me." His words were straightforward. Humans rarely hid meaning behind flourishes. She appreciated that. "I do not know much about humans," she said. "My people only speak of your strength." "Strength," he said, "means little if it causes harm. True strength is used with care." Alira found herself studying his face. His eyes held no cruelty, only steadiness, only intent to understand and adapt rather than dominate. She began to think that perhaps the alliance was not a burden at all. Over the next days, she accompanied Rylan across the palace grounds. He observed Valyrian customs without judgment. He learned their greetings, their signs of respect, and even their humor, which was subtle and gentle compared to human banter. He found it delightful. Alira watched him interact with her people. Every time someone feared him, he responded with calm politeness. Every time someone challenged him, he offered respectful clarity. He never raised his voice. He never used his stature to intimidate. He carried himself like someone aware of his power, yet unwilling to harm, unless absolutely necessary. Her fear melted faster than she expected. One afternoon, she brought him to the royal garden, where the flowering trees emitted shifting colors when one passed beneath their branches. Their hues mirrored the emotions of those nearby. When Alira stepped under them, the petals warmed to soft blue, the shade of lingering caution mixed with hope. When Rylan joined her, the petals shimmered into gold, the color of steady resolve. She looked up at him in surprise. He met her gaze. "What does gold mean?" "Determination," she said quietly. "But also honesty." He tilted his head. "And that surprises you?" "A little," she admitted. "Humans are described as unpredictable, dangerous." His expression softened. "We can be. But danger is not our nature. It is a response to threat, not a weapon we carry for pleasure." She breathed out slowly. She understood more with every conversation. As days passed, Rylan gained the trust of the palace guards, who saw that he was disciplined rather than violent. He earned the respect of the scholars by listening more than speaking. He even gained admiration from the younger nobles, who viewed him as a heroic figure, but were surprised to find he lacked arrogance. But what affected Alira most was how he treated her in private. He never rushed her. He never assumed they were bound by anything beyond duty. He allowed her to choose when to speak, when to share, when to step closer. His restraint was not cold. It was considerate. One evening, after a long day of diplomatic exchanges, Alira invited him to walk along the balcony gardens overlooking the city. The lights danced across the distant towers, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of glowing lily. "Rylan," she said, her voice steady but gentle, "when our union was proposed, I feared you." "I know," he answered without offense. "But now," she continued, "I feel something different." "What do you feel?" She faced him fully. Safe. A long quiet stretched between them, but it was not tense. It was like a soft pause before something meaningful. Rylan lowered his gaze for a moment, then looked back at her. "I am grateful for that, and I will continue to earn it." Her heart warmed again. It was happening often now. She stepped closer, and he did not retreat. They stood at a respectful distance, but nearer than before. The moment held stillness, but also growing connection. She met his eyes. That same stare she had first seen across the hall greeted her again. Focused, patient, strong without being forceful, protective without being possessive. It was the stare of someone who would fight a world to keep a promise, but would never harm the one to whom the promise was given. She felt no fear now. Only understanding in the weeks that followed, their lives intertwined more naturally. They attended councils together, trained together in the palace arena, where she was surprised to find he preferred defensive techniques over aggressive ones, and shared meals where he learned to enjoy Valyrian dishes with mild amusement as spices changed colors on his tongue, began to look forward to every moment. One night, the calm of the palace was shattered when a hostile faction attempted to breach the spire. The guards rushed to defend the halls, and Alira was escorted toward the safe chamber. Rylan joined her, but when the attackers reached the mid-level corridor, they struck with unexpected strength. A blast rocked the hall. Alira stumbled. Rylan caught her, lifting her behind cover as debris scattered. He shielded her with his body without hesitation. His voice remained steady. "Stay behind me." She saw then what the stories never mentioned. His strength was controlled. Even in danger, he did not lose himself to violence. He moved with precision, protecting rather than destroying. When reinforcements arrived and the threat was cleared, Alira found herself gripping his arm, breathing hard. He looked down at her with concern. "Are you hurt?" "No," she said. "Because of you." He relaxed just slightly. Later, when they returned to their private chamber, Alira faced him with newfound clarity. "Raylan," she said, "the stories were wrong." He said nothing, allowing her to continue. "You are not cruel," she said. "You are strong, but your strength has purpose. You are fierce, but only when needed. And you are patient beyond measure." He held her gaze. "And you are braver than you believe." She stepped closer until only a small space remained between them. "I no longer fear the human groom." He lifted a hand slowly, giving her time to stop him. She did not. His hand rested lightly against her cheek. "What do you feel now?" he asked. She met his stare again. The same stare that had once terrified her. The same stare that had since become her anchor. "Trust," she whispered. His expression softened into something warm and steady, and more than trust. Her heart beat faster, not with fear, but with understanding. With connection. When he leaned forward, their foreheads touched gently. No force, no demand, only shared intent. They stayed like that for a long moment, letting the silence speak more clearly than words. Alira finally understood the truth behind the human reputation. Their fierceness was not cruelty. Their strength was not oppression. Their will was not domination. It was devotion. And the man she had once feared had shown her that with every breath he took in her presence. From that moment onward, the alliance was no longer political. It became personal, real, rooted not in duty, but in a bond neither had expected. Alera no longer feared the human Groom. She cherished him, and when she met his stare each day, she found not the threat of cruelty, but the promise of unwavering loyalty. The tailies of humans would never again frighten her, because she had seen the truth of one, human, and that truth was hers.